lead and copper. To open the meeting, I'd like to just call the attendance of the members of LASA that are present this morning. I'll call off the names if you'll just acknowledge your attendance here today from the LASA board. Elijah Flintoff. Here. Kingsley. Here. Carey. McLaughlin. Here. Navarre. Here. Westman. And then we have our LASA Operations Committee, all volunteers working for you. Dorney. Here. Fisher. Here. Garrell. Here. Kingsley. Here. Lewis. Here. McLaughlin. Here. Navarre. Here. Washenko. Yes. And we have our consultants. Damon. Here. Operations. Lesage. Here. Accounts manager. And Erickson. Here. Engineer. Thank you. We also have present members of the state EGLE group and Michigan Department of MHDS, and whatever. Even surgery. Okay, my bad. And we thank you for coming today. All right, at this time, we're going to keep this informal. We're going to try to keep it to 2 minutes presentation. It looks just so everybody gets a chance to speak. And we'll split it between those present and those on the Zoom. Maybe switch one to the other. So as one person steps down, ask the next one to step up. Okay? And we'll alternate between Zoom and those present. All right, so we'll start with an opening presentation or just a few words I'd like to make about the system, about it, where we are now, and then Jennifer Bold, who is present, standing at the podium, from the EGLE, will kind of give you her presentation on all the regulations and rules that are required by the state, by the new laws that recently or came out a year or two ago. So just kind of summarizing what took place here in the last year. As you know, I'm going to basically read from what happened or what was published on the Loch Alpine LASA website. Okay, as you know, for the first time, 2 houses out of 9 houses tested this summer had high lead levels that were over the action limit set by EPA. Those houses were retested for lead as part of the process. The follow-up testing was better. But since the Flint crisis, high numbers cannot be thrown out with retesting. As a result, we are in a violation of the action limit for lead. And how we continue is dictated by the rules from the state of Michigan, EGLE. Please note the samples were taken at a sink. First water out after 6 hours of stagnation in the house. And only indicates the water quality at the sink in that house. Scripture rules from the state of Michigan means further testing must be performed over the next 12 months. Following testing is meant to figure out if this is an isolated incident or a trend of increasing corrosion in the water system. Loch Alpine will be testing 20 houses for lead and copper in the first 6 months and the last 6 months of 2024. Now, I want to just emphasize again, this is the first time LACA has found lead levels above action level. LACA has no known lead service line. Which, as you get further in the presentation, is good news. Further information is being collected to identify the lead sources, we anticipate being in the house will confirm their tenant. The houses that had a high level of lead in their sample have already been notified. So with that, kind of summarizes where we're at. Now, I would like to turn the floor over to Jennifer, who will discuss some of the questions or answer some of the questions you may have in her general presentation, and then we'll open it up for further Q&A. Okay? Jennifer, please.
All right, thanks, Dave. I am going to work on sharing my screen.
Oh.
Is there a way to confirm that people can see this?
Yes, there's been.
All right, wonderful. All right, my name is Jenny Bolt. I work for the Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy. We call it EGLE. People who have been around a little bit longer may have known us as the Department of Environmental Quality, DEQ. We do handle the Safe Drinking Water Act. The specific unit that I'm in is the lead and copper unit, because the lead and copper rule is very specific, very complicated, and it kind of balances this whole thing between the water that the system is serving, and all water is corrosive, but making sure that we're minimizing that corrosivity and making sure that we're not getting as much lead and copper at the taps. When we see larger amount of levels, then we make the system take action, and we'll kind of get into that in this general presentation. I have a couple of other people with me from the lead and copper unit. I've got Ashlyn Deely, who's an analyst in our unit, and Katie Stroh. Oh boy, Katie Stroh. Thank you. She's one of our engineers that's also newly come into the unit as well. So in general, what I want to kind of go over, and this conversation and these slides have been kind of born through the conversations that I've been having with LAHSA residents. As they've gotten the notice from the community, as they've had some questions about testing, what's going on. This is kind of just going through that general conversation that I've been having one-on-one with individual residents, but then being able to use this forum to get to many more people at one specific time. We're going to go through kind of how lead gets into drinking water in general, why we have and what the rule kind of looks for with the lead and copper rule, going through some of the sampling highlights of why these homes were chosen, what these results can mean, and then the metric that the rule uses when a system has to take more action or not is called an action level, and we'll go through that. Because when it is exceeded, when it's above those levels, then that's definitely where we want to see actions from the system to look into potential issues. So how lead gets into drinking water is that it's in contact with a source of lead. And that can be, like Dave mentioned, lead service lines, but LAHSA doesn't have any lead service lines. So that is not a source of lead exposure for this community, but it does come from several other locations as far as older plumbing within the home, and also fixtures. So older plumbing within the home, you'd be looking at copper with lead solder. Those copper pipes were put together with a solder that had lead in it until it was expressly banned in July of 1988. So if your home was built before 88, you've got copper plumbing, it was more than likely put together with a lead-based solder. And then some of that solder, all depending on how good your plumber was, some of that solder, or if it's a little bit messier, a little bit more of that solder is in contact with the water on the inside of those pipes. It can also come from fixtures. Fixtures were not regulated until 1996. And then at that point in time, they started putting metrics to it as far as how much allowable lead was in these fixtures. At that point in time, they said no more than 8% by weight of the entire fixture. And then in 2014, they dropped that down even further to 0.25% of the wetted surface. So the part that's in contact with the water, where that interaction happens, where that chemical interaction happens, and that those lead-containing materials can have the lead dissolve in the water. Other things that you may have, galvanized pipe It's iron or steel that's dipped in zinc. There is a little bit of that coating that does have lead, but it's a very small amount. And a lot of times, if there was a part of the service line that was lead and there's galvanized downstream of it, you may be hearing about this a little bit more statewide, not so much LASA. But statewide, the galvanized pipes can also be a problem if they were ever downstream of lead. Because basically what they do is that when they corrode, they create a topography. If anybody's seen a galvanized pipe, it'll rust straight through. And it kind of starts from the inside and builds, kind of build up in the middle, and that will trap lead particles, and that will also become a problem down the road. Brass is also an alloy that contains lead. So that can also be a source. But in general, with this community, what we're talking about is internal building plumbing within the homes and being that copper with lead solder and those older fixtures. All right, so one of the things that I highly recommend you guys take with you, if you're in person, we have copies of this. If you're online, this is a graphic from EPA. You should be able to find it with Google fairly easily. But this goes through exactly every single one of those sources that I just kind of mentioned. So you can take this and kind of think about your home, the age of your home, plumbing materials, what you may or may not know about the fixtures based on how long you've owned the home or if you just moved in. This is something I highly recommend that you start looking at what your potential sources may be. All right, so knowing that these sources are out there, that they've been widely used, that they're still in use today. What the lead and copper rule does is it looks at making water systems monitor for lead and copper at fixtures inside of homes, because that's where those plumbing materials are that have those lead components. That's where the lead is getting into the drinking water. And so that's where we need to sample. And this is why somebody's asking to expressly sample inside of your home at your kitchen or your bathroom sink. By monitoring those, we can then be able to tell and use that action level to be able to tell when additional actions need to be taken. So unless we're looking for a problem, we don't find a problem. And honestly, with these, notifications are going to pop up. That's not going to be good. When we have these action level exceedances, it's more of a statistical tool that we use as a screening process. It doesn't guarantee that there's a problem, but there's enough high results that it warrants looking into. That it's almost like an indicator, like we've got something going on. We've got one data set with some results that are elevated. And what we really need to do is to look into it further. And maybe that will be that, that this can be a one-time sampling event. It could also be something that's a little bit more systematic. It can be throughout the entire community, and then we need to address working on reducing the corrosive nature of the water and the corrosion of those materials for the entire community, if that proves to be the case. But we have one data set right now. So what needs to happen is to get more information. Because I clicked off of it. Okay, so like I said, what the rule does is that we have to look for it to be able to find it. And the way we do that is through routine monitoring. What Dave mentioned, that this is the first time that there's been an action level exceedant, that's completely true. This rule started in the 1990s. Systems have been sampling since somewhere between 92 to 94, all depending on the size of the system. So we have lots of data from the general community over that course of, well, the last about 30 years that hasn't shown an issue. But when we do see an issue in the data, we always have to follow up with it to explore it and see where it leads us. How many samples? Dave mentioned that there were 9 samples this action level was calculated out of. Based on the community size, is how many samples you have to collect. And it's also kind of a thing that you're not sampling every single home. So you're not going to know what's going on in every single home. But what you're going to do is that you're gonna choose those homes with those plumbing materials. So we are specifically looking at homes with that copper with lead solder to be able to look at least in those homes, with those risk criteria that represent the highest risk within the community. What are those lead and copper levels? And do we have to take additional actions? The number of sites right now was 10 for this most recent round. So unfortunately, we were one under what the requirements were. But looking into these results, what's going to happen is we're going to double that number. We're going to be looking at 20 homes. So we are looking at a bigger sample size. We're going to get more information and we'll see where that data leads us. And like Dave said, that's going to be the first or the 2 6-month rounds in 2024. So we should have data between January and June. We should also have data between July and December. Now, just choosing those homes, we're looking at the highest risk criteria within the community, but we're also looking at a very specific sampling methodology. Because what we're trying to do is look at that interaction between the plumbing materials and the water, but also look at what someone's consumption could be. So the sampling procedure, it requires 6 hours of stagnation. So under normal use conditions, somebody may be going to work during the day or school, sleeping overnight where the water is sitting stagnant in the home and the water is sitting in contact with those plumbing materials and that chemical reaction is happening. So the results that we want to get for this compliance sampling is at least after 6 hours that chemical reaction has been happening. And we also want it at your kitchen or bathroom sink because that's where you're going to be consuming the water. It's going to give us a number for the lead levels and for the copper levels that not only represent corrosion within the system, that not only represent the water that's being served to the homes and what happens to it when it's in contact with those plumbing materials, but also the numbers that are associated with potential risk of health effects and health exposure. So this is why this is a very specific sampling method as far as 6 hours of stagnation from that kitchen or bathroom tap, from a cold water faucet. Heat it, you're supposed to cook, drink, brush your teeth with cold water. So if you're filling up a pot, you should fill it up with cold water rather than with hot water. I know that hot water may get you there a little bit sooner, but cold water is something where that chemical reaction is not happening as much. There's going to be naturally lower lead levels or lower copper levels using that cold water. So from a health-based perspective, always use cold water for cooking or drinking. That's also what we're sampling in this specific methodology. Then when we get the results, we look at the 90th percentile. So this is not the highest result within the community. It's not an average, it's a 90th percentile. Because what we're doing, like I said, this is a statistical screening tool. That when more than 10% of the homes that are sampled come back over the action level, then we have something where we need to follow up. We need to do more investigation. LASA specifically, we had a 90th percentile that was 89 parts per billion. The action level is currently 15 parts per billion, so it's over. And it doesn't trigger any different actions if it was 16 or if it was 89. If you are over, and the same actions are required. And like Dave said, this is because 2 of those 9 homes that we used the numbers to calculate the 90th were over 15 parts per billion. 2 out of 9 is more than 10%. Therefore, that 90th percentile is also going to be over 15 parts per billion. All right, I kind of got into this a little bit early, but that's okay. Like I said, an action level, it's not a health-based value. We use 15 as a metric for corrosion within a system. The health-based number for lead is actually 0. There is no safe level of lead in the blood. Therefore, you have to kind of translate that in there too. There's no safe level of lead exposure in paint, in dust, in soil, or any other method where it would be in your body and then end up as blood level. So health-based level is 0. But we know that these materials are in use and all water is corrosive because it's the universal solvent. So 15 is used as a metric of corrosion control. And a lot of the legislation you're going to be seeing coming out either from Michigan or from the EPA, that we are dropping that level. We are getting those materials out of the system, either by banning solder, banning those lead pipes, reducing it in fixtures. We can now do better as an action level. So right now, Michigan has already had it into law since 2018 that we're going to be dropping that from 15 to 12, starting January 1st, 2025. And EPA just has been working on finalizing their new set of rules since 2021. They are dropping it from 15 to 10. So in either of those cases, and Michigan will also go to 10 because we always follow the most strict requirement in these circumstances. That since these materials are out of the system more, they're less in use now, we can do better with those action levels. With copper, there is, if you can see the screen, where the maximum contaminant level goal for lead is 0. For copper, it's 1,300 parts per billion or 1.3 parts per million, because there is a safe level of copper. So while this is a lead and copper rule, we look at it slightly differently because there is an allowable level of copper. It's actually an essential nutrient. There's an allowable level of copper, but just like all things, in moderation. And when we get above those levels, then we also ask the system to start taking actions to address corrosion within the system. Right. This slide, like I said, this was within this week that EPA has just been able to give us new information about their upcoming rule. So this slide's just a little bit dated. And that kind of shows you how quickly these things are changing. This new lead action level dropping to 10 should be sometime during 2027, depending on when EPA finalizes the rule. Then there'll be 3 years until that's implemented. Right now, they're proposing October of 2024, so that would be sometime in 2027 that it would drop to 10. Now, when you have an exceedance, so more than 10% of the sites have elevated levels, that 90th percentile calculation is over 15 parts per billion. Then the water system has some next steps that they have to do. And it's pretty varied as far as it goes. The number one thing and the quickest thing that has to happen is outreach and education. You know, these may be new concepts, new information to everybody, and that's okay. But the idea is that when you get information that you've got some high lead levels within a community, that's the first thing you need to do, is raise awareness, have people start thinking about their individual homes, what their water usage is like and what their risk exposure may be. Then the system's going to go into getting more information, testing twice the number of homes, testing at an increased frequency, seeing where that information takes us. We're also going to be testing something called water quality parameters. And what they are is other aspects of the water, like pH and alkalinity, and several more, that can kind of tell us whether the water is more or less corrosive, more scale forming or more aggressive. So they're going to be looking into that, not just out in the distribution system, but also at the water treatment plant, so that we can compare the two and see if anything's changing throughout the system. They're also going to be sampling the source water. Right now, Loss's source is several wells that we're going to be looking at if there is a deposit of lead. It's a metal. It's mined from the ground. Sometimes it can be in contact with the groundwater before it's even pumped up by the well. What we're going to do is sample that and remove that as a potential variable. And then corrosion control treatment steps, all of this kind of works together between the awareness, the investigation, and then ultimately coming together as far as, you know, if we see that the levels stay the same, if we see that from the water quality parameters that we're seeing aggressive water, then we need to address it potentially through installing an inhibitor and treating the water slightly different with a product called orthophosphate. It's generally a phosphate inhibitor. And what it does is that because how lead gets into drinking water is the exposure to the lead containing material, so that interaction between the water and the plumbing, what the orthophosphate does is it creates a barrier. And so that interaction happens less. And so therefore you get less lead into the drinking water. But that's only if we have a confirmation from the next set of sampling that there is a problem that we need to address. So these are all the things that the water system is going to be doing. I have this timetable over on the side. This is basically what also received as far as, breaking down all of these requirements and giving them a timetable as far as what they need to do and what time frame they need to do it in. Most of these requirements, started as early in November, and are going to be going through the course of 2024. But what should residents do? I've had a lot of residents call me and ask about this and ask about testing their water, and that's a great step. What I would highly recommend for any resident hearing this information, hearing that there are high lead levels, is think about your home, your potential sources of lead, what you know about your home, possibly when it was built, what materials you have as far as plumbing goes, if you know anything about your fixture. If not, see if you can find out. There are makers, marks, and things that are on there that you can see if they are lead-free or possibly the time frame when they were made. And when in doubt, you may want to look into replacing some of those sources, because removing those sources will ultimately reduce your risks. Okay, other than removing those sources, there are many other ways to reduce your risks of lead exposure. You can always use cold water, like I said. You can also run your water or potentially use a filter. Either one of those will reduce lead levels. So running your water, using it, so after that period of stagnation, where it's been in contact, that chemical reaction has happened, you've had that lead come into the drinking water, running that water and not using it for cooking and drinking, but using it for something else, you can naturally lower those lead levels. Basically, because all of that water that was sitting in contact with the plumbing materials, what you're doing by running it is flushing that through the home. And when you feel a cold, stable temperature, you know that you're through all the plumbing that you've been ambiently heating or cooling inside of your home, and to the service line and out into the main when it hits that cold, stable groundwater temperature. That's one way. But if you don't want to think about when the last time you used the water is, or worry about when it's cold, when it's stable, using a filter is a great way to also reduce your lead levels, because every single time you turn it on, it will be automatic. It'll go through that filter and it'll be reducing those lead levels. You can also test your water for lead. We have a list of certified labs statewide. There's about 26 of them that can all do these analysis. You can look at somebody that's local. Do some price shopping. There's also the state lab, and I can give you basic information for them. They're $26 a sample for testing for lead. They will send you the bottle kit. You fill out the information. We can even show you with a bottle that we've got at the table of how you need to fill that up, go through the instructions in general, but all of that information will be in the box of the bottle when you get it. And then if you have any questions about the results you get back, you can definitely give us a call and we can walk through that as far as what does 0 mean? What does 5 mean? I'm under 15, but is that good enough? Because we talked about that health-based level being 0. You can also look at reducing your risk by removing those plumbing materials. I've already mentioned that. And then there's also talking to your primary care physician, your pediatrician, your local health department about potential health effects and if lead level testing is available and where it's available. All right. With that, there are a couple of links that I think you should be aware of. The first one is DHHS's Get Ahead of Lead. It's a fairly newly launched website about addressing lead exposure. There's also our lead public advisory. It's pretty much the same document that you received from LASA. It's just available online. And it has a couple of links that'll take you directly to other information that's available for those steps to reduce exposure. And then if you're interested in testing your water, finding a lab or even using the state lab, you can go to EGLE Lab. It's a link. You can look for certified labs. lead and copper certified labs, or it'll give you a phone number to be able to call to just order a bottle kit from the state lab itself. And Dave, that's the end of my presentation.
All right.
So if you want to take it over for questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Jennifer. I would just like to also acknowledge we have representatives from the health department here and the state and the county.
Yes.
So if you would maybe introduce yourself just to make everybody aware, and it might draw some questions. So we'll then get into the question period.
You want me to go over there, here?
No, podium would be best.
I can do that. Good to get my steps in, right?
Yeah, get the blood circulating.
Right, no, it's needed. So I'm Yost Vendor, I'm a toxicologist with MDHHS. So here to help with any health questions or, how to reduce that exposure is my.
Hi there, I'm Kristen Faithful. I'm the environmental health director of the Washington County Health Department. And our environmental health division is just across the parking lot. And as Jenny was mentioning, we also sell water sample bottles. So I can talk to you about kind of what that bottles we have available, the cost and the process. Also available for any questions.
All right, thank you. Well, at this point, did I miss anyone then? Are all our guest speakers here? Let's open it up the floor to questions. We'll start with someone from the floor, and I would suggest maybe we get a on deck box. Next person up, maybe sit behind. Your name again?
Yost.
Yost. That's
It's gonna get me in trouble all day long.
I will. Yeah, sit next to Yost there and be ready for the on deck. Okay. So go ahead and take the podium. Someone here, please start.
And Dave, could I suggest that you take questions first from in here, and then we've got 46 attendees.
Okay, we can do that. Whatever works best. Why don't we? Okay. But you have to go to the podium so we can record you. Anything you say, maybe you against. Just.
You should have said that at the beginning.
Yeah. It's kind of intimidating.
I'm sorry.
In the sampling that you guys in the documentation, you said 9 out of the samples, 2 were affected. Question I have is, you haven't told us where in the community those, and I don't know if you can, those establishments or the houses that you tested. Because I'm looking at the geographics of it. I have an older home in the community, so I'm thinking I might be a suspect here, but is there any areas of the Loch Alpine area that you did test that you can share?
Well, it's Jennifer could probably offer the legality of it, but it's kind of private information. It really doesn't affect you. What affects you is your house and the age of it. I will just say it's in the middle of the distribution area, the house. Okay. I don't know, Jennifer, do you know anything about the legality of or how that
Not so
works?
much the legality, but I will say if you give out addresses, you're not really promoting people to want to participate.
Yeah, no.
And then I wanted to address the geographic question. Basically, this is something where these are all the endpoints of the water system. That you've got the mains, basically from the water treatment plant, it runs through water mains. And those are generally the lines that will come from the plant down the street. And then you have individual lines that run off of that serve the homes. Those are the service lines. And these are all kind of one direction flows unless there's some type of catastrophic loss of pressure and then some backflow. But because it's one directional, your home, the age of the home makes a lot more of a difference as far as potential risk and potential lead levels than geographic area within the system.
Yeah,
So,
that was my reason, is because I live in an older portion of Loch Alpine. It's been
Right.
around for a long time, and yet I know that like in Aberdeen, that's a newer section and so forth.
Yeah, that matters. If there's different phases of development within the community, then that's definitely something that, sometimes county records aren't always 100% accurate, sorry. But, if you're in one of those older sections, unless there's been a complete home remodel, then you definitely want to look into it.
All right, next.
Is it by you, Yost? Okay. Thank you.
That's the way to go.
All right.
Morning, hi. Hi, Dave.
Hello.
We just purchased Dave's house, but
And by the way, I will say, since I built it and the plumber and I had in 76, the plumber said, do you want to use lead free or, which is hard to, doesn't sometimes doesn't, or leaks, you know, we got to go back and do it, or lead solder. And I said, lead free, please. So technically you shouldn't have an issue, Frank.
okay. I'll see that. So now I can sit down. Okay. No, but here's what I'm trying to grasp, I guess. Based on what we've been told so far, I don't understand why any of us would not want to get our water tested.
Right.
I mean, it's just common sense. I mean, seriously, if the safe level is 0, you know, so that's what I'm a little confused about. And in the samples that were tested, and the results that came out high, or a result that came out high, do any of us know if that particular site, any further investigation has been done yet to determine whether or not the source of the lead is within the home or at the street? Do we know, does that even make sense, that question? Is it possible that no matter what they do in the home, the street will still be putting lead into their home? Is that possible? And how are we, the homeowner, supposed to separate the two sources, or you know what I mean?
Okay, let's see if we can answer your question. I think I want 2 people to respond. Brandon, would you start with basically what you know from the 2 sites? I mean, we did do some further investigation. I'll just leave it at that. And I know Jenny, as the state even did some, or the county did some further investigation.
The state, but it was part of DHHS, but not EGLE.
Okay. Okay. And can you share that information?
I think we have the results in.
Okay, Brandon, do you want to
Okay,
say?
we can start with Brandon and we'll see where it
Yeah,
goes.
Brandon, just, so further work has been done.
Essentially, we have a list from when the,
Brandon, would
Brandon,
you
you're
be so
gonna have
kind
to-
to come over here? Sorry, it's just best for the audio for people at home in the room. Thank you.
Brandon's our operator. He's responsible for keeping the 100-year-old system operating.
Thank you, Brandon.
so with the, once we got the high levels, we have a list, we went through and you guys all had your water meters replaced. There's a list that we have of, they check the internal, where your pipe comes into your house. We check that list and they show copper. So that's where we're getting that part of it, and we're also 2025, I believe, Jenny, correct? Complete material systems inventory has to be completed.
October 16th, 2024.
Yes, so with Ted's help, we're going through records, you know, checking what those service line materials are. So we are checking those service line materials, verifying that the information that we have and we know is correct. Double checking. Okay, so.
Right. And the second part of my question was for if you do have an issue at your home, and there's a lot of filters out there, a lot of people, water softeners, all kinds of things. Can the state be more specific about what type of filter, in fact, they recommend for your whole house water system?
I can take that one. I will say that a filter is going to be most effective at the point of use. Because like we've been talking about, a lot of the sources of lead are actually the plumbing and the fixtures within the home. So if you did a point of entry, so a softener or something like that, the location of those type of treatment devices, the water is still gonna be in contact with those lead sources afterwards and still potentially have lead in it. So if you're looking for a treatment device to reduce potential lead levels, a point of use filter or a pitcher filter would be your best option. And the ones that are recommended to reduce lead are NSF 53 certified. Now that's a general metals category, so you want to make sure it specifically lists lead. And all this information, if you're looking at filters, it's going to be in the fine print in the box. So that page that comes with it, in this case, you're definitely going to want to read it. So 53 for lead, and then also 42, and that's a particulate rating. And I know that a lot of the materials, either from EGLE or from DHHS, will have that information on there. Those filters are tested, are certified, are rated, and in recent challenge tests, basically will bring the levels down to somewhere reliably between 0 and 2.
How does reverse osmosis fit into this category?
Okay, I'm gonna go and take reverse osmosis and general treatment devices, like softeners. So there's a difference between the water that LASA is serving and it's being delivered to your home. And then there's a difference when you have a treatment device in your home and you're changing the water quality in your home. And sometimes that is good. I mean, the softeners will address hardness. They're designed to remove inorganics, so it can be those positive iron molecules, or it can also be positive lead molecules. But they change the water quality. And sometimes that can be a good thing, and sometimes that can be a bad thing. If it removes a lot of things from the water, it can make it more aggressive to put more things in. So we have seen scenarios where softeners will increase the aggressiveness of the water, increase the corrosion, and then when it's in contact with lead-containing materials, actually cause higher lead levels. RO kind of works on the same principle, except where you're taking everything out. And RO water, because you've taken everything out, has a very aggressive water quality and will take metals out of the plumbing materials.
And that's why you see RO systems you always use plastic pipe. Next. Thanks for the question, Frank. Very good.
I guess mine's a question and a statement. I am surprised to hear you have this and it tested poorly and we don't know where, somewhere in the system. And our response is we're going to do 20 more tests in the next 6 months. I am surprised. And I guess I'm surprised about that for a lot of reasons. But the other thing, as a homeowner, when you sell, you have a legal obligation to tell people you can't just not disclose a problem on your house. It sets you up for legal liability. And I was going to buy a house in Monroe, Michigan, and we wanted it tested for radon. And the homeowner just wouldn't do it, but we did it anyway. And we tested for radon, and radon was sky high in the basement. And the fix was $7,000 a system and all that. And the seller said, well, I'm not going to do that. I must sell it as it is. And the realtor told them, well, I'm just going to tell you right now, I have a legal obligation to disclose this to the county health department. So you do whatever you want to do, but this house is going to have an X on it. You can't sell this house to somebody that you now know is full of radon. These tests matter. The tests, if people go out and get a private test and it comes back bad, they might be able to keep that a secret, but you now, as a community, are going to taint every home that's going to sell. And I don't know why you would open up tainting all the homes if there's only 5 homes that it's really a problem in. I don't know why, as your board, you don't rise above this. Because you can't sell, you legally have to disclose what you know is wrong with your house. And I don't know why you don't rise above this as a board. And I'm gonna say another couple of things, and that's my question, why you don't rise above?
Okay, you're over your limit,
Okay.
please be bright, please be concise. I'll let you know.
Okay. In Loch Alpine, we had really poor power, electric. And they had a meeting up at Webster Township Hall with DTE. And it was like this, and people came, they talked about it, and they had slides and all that. And the power reliability has only gotten worse, only gotten worse. What is going to be different about this than the power company meeting we had at Webster?
Okay, thank you. So what is gonna be different than the power, I guess, was one question, and then the other question was, what was the first question? I'm sorry.
Why doesn't the board rise? above-
Why didn't,
Why doesn't the board rise above the more testing, which it sounds like he's concerned is just not going to actually address the problem and expand it.
well, I think the board's trying to do, the state is, we are dictated by what the state EGLE requires us to do for the next year. We have no choices. There's been a program in place by the state and they're being driven by EPA also to determine the problem, so to speak. We can't assume there's a problem when 2 out of 500 houses have this issue. So we need to further investigate it. It hasn't been a problem in the past, and I think we're working towards a solution with the state's help. We'll work towards determining the extent of the repair or, additional corrosion control that's required. Any addition to that, Jennifer? I can
probably add a couple of things. I guess I will say that going from 10 to 20, well, starting with 10 in general, yes, it's a small subset of 500 homes. But we are specifically choosing high-risk locations for the materials that are present within the water system. But that's not going to translate for everyone in every single home to know exactly what their home is. That's why we're looking at least a double the size sampling set, but that's a minimum set by the state as far as at least from 20 homes, and that they all meet that copper with lead solder risk criteria. So that is something that if it's a consideration that the board wants to take as far as doing more sampling, it's an option. But it's something that has to be decided on and done by the water system, because like Dave said, the EPA ultimately writes most of the rules. Michigan has improved upon a few where we're a little bit off. But in general, this metric of how big the water system is and how many samples are being collected within the community, that's all set by federal rule, but these are all minimums. And especially if you do private water testing and you want to share that information with the water system, then that's completely your decision, but it is for more information for them to make an informed decision about anything going forward. Like Dave also mentioned, if this is not just a one-time sample set, that this shows that this is a problem, if the system continues at that 90th percentile level continues to exceed the action level, then there is a stepwise process that leads to installing that treatment to reduce corrosion and ultimately reduce those lead levels. Anything else that I possibly missed?
No, I think we gotta keep. All right, I think that's good. We gotta keep moving here and get as many people, answer as many questions as we can.
Thank you everyone for being here. Michelle, you had a very informative presentation, so thank you for that. My question has to do with who do I contact as a Loch Alpine resident if I have follow-up questions? I received a notice on my door on November 27th with a telephone number. I called and left 3 voicemails on that telephone line. And then I emailed LASA Plant, LASA Billing, and also David Navarre as a Loch Alpine resident. I still have not received a response. So my question today is, should I have further questions beyond today's meeting, who can I contact that will reliably give me a response? Thank you. And I think I saw some questions from the online community.
So Sylvia raised this to me too, and I do think it's something we should briefly discuss and verify, but the 1-800 lead and copper number is the number you're talking about? Okay, so who is the point person on that?
Well, that has been set up. It goes to the LASA billing, and I had 4 volunteers to fill those lines. We've had over 100 calls,
Wow.
and many have been beat up by it and want to take a break for a minute before they go back and do it anymore. So that process has not been very successful, in my opinion. We're looking for better actions. Anything I've answered, I thought, all my emails that have come in. If there's something I missed, I apologize.
Well, Dave, I want to thank the volunteers and everybody who's jumping on and trying to keep up.
Yes, definitely. This is pretty much a volunteer organization. So we need to do something there. You're absolutely right. A better method of communication. I tried to get, are you the one that lives on Greenock or Greenock Boulevard?
Climbing Way.
No, okay. Never mind. All right, well, we need to come see me after. I'll make sure okay. All right.
I live on East Loch Alpine, but when you mentioned that there were some areas that were more in danger than others, I'm just wondering, okay, what areas are they, so that those of us who live in them can be urged to take steps?
There are no areas that are damaged. It's the house itself at this point in time.
Right, but some are huge. There were some areas that were more, where the houses.
Only if it's phases of development. So you're looking ultimately at when the home was built, not really what area it's in, unless Loch Alpine was built in a specific phase type of.
Oh.
Well, not actually. There are individual houses were built. It's all it was never developed by one developer. It was
Nonetheless.
so we have.
In my area, we're all built before 1980.
Okay, so you basically have a concern. Your concern is lead in the solder joints and in the fixtures at your house. That is your concern.
So
How do you address that?
age depends on the house.
Yeah, it's all about age of the house. Okay, does that help you?
Well,
It's your first step towards analyzing what risk level you're at.
I'll jump in, Dave.
Okay, Kevin, go for it.
I've been a Loch Alpine resident for 30 years. When I moved in, I purchased myself a water filter system. A point of use, as Jennifer points out, is the only way to be safe because it is the age of the house. I did water testing for 25 years in my previous occupation. And to get to the level 0, it will cost more than your house. I can tell you that right now. What you want to get to is a low level, below the state minimums. I think is the closer you get, the better. But to get to 0, believe me, it's not possible. Not in your home. Not in your home. The one thing I would like Lassa to clarify is the piping from the street to the home, which was highlighted in the Flint crisis. Is that a safe piping system, or is that a Brandon question? Is there any lead associated with those pipes in the fittings into the home?
Our records show nothing.
Okay, so for the
And
homeowners.
our rules and regulations state should be copper.
Right, and what Jennifer was pointing out and what the testing has pointed out, it's what's in your home. It's the builder, the choices that he made, putting in your piping in the home at the point. So if your builder last month put in copper piping and he took the solder off his 20-year-old shelf, he's legally doing his job, or not, I won't say legally, I'm just saying that he's using components that he bought previous, and he can't put those in. But what the state says is they're telling the builders, don't do that. But it really comes down to when the builder went into your house and when that repair or pipe was put in. So point of use filter, that's what I want to stress, is the point of use filter is the safest way to get as close to zero as possible. The filter I use, it's guaranteed 95% of the lead out of the water. It's an NSF certified, and that's what you want to look for. NSF certified for 40 and 53.
42.
Or 42 and 53, excuse me. And there's a whole lot more. I mean, the 53-2022 is the current standard, I believe. And that's what you want to go for. But, you know, it really comes down to get a branded filter with certification and something that you can, has a warranty and you can rely on.
Where can you get those?
People, Ace.
Where can you get those?
They're at Meijer and Walmart.
Pretty much any big box store or hardware department now carries them.
Home Depot.
Yep.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Next, anyone else in the room here? Okay,
And then-
come right up, and then we
and
should
then we
switch.
and
Yeah,
then
we'll
we come
switch for
back
one.
again.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
And I would just add, the filters are only as good as you rotate them. Also, a long filter, a filter's been in too long breeds bacteria quickly. With that, go ahead, please.
Thank you, David. Lisa Pappas. I live in Loch Alpine. I still have my hand raised on Zoom, so I will just disconnect now that I'm here in person. So thank you, Jessica, for revisiting that alternating approach. I think that's great for anybody who's immobile at home. I have some good news that I wanted to share with the neighbors. Right across the street at the other building where there's the red awning, there's the Washtenaw County Department of Health and 4 of us on our lane got our water tested and we all came out negative, meaning fine. So we were all very reassured with that. And just in case nobody was aware of that, I know I checked with the state first and it was going to take months to get results. We got a result in a week and it cost $10. So I just wanted to share the good news, and then also the resource. On a more concerning level, I was glad to hear from Jen, or not glad, I was surprised to hear from Jen that the acceptable level of lead is 0. I was not aware of that, and I'm sure, if the rules are changing that much, it's got to be hard for everybody to keep up. But I was a little concerned I wasn't feeling well, so I had my blood tested for lead, and it came up positive with a very low level. According to health officials, they're still operating from information that says it's an acceptable level. But if the acceptable level is 0, I do not meet that, unfortunately. So the fact that our house was built in 1957 is one of the oldest houses, and I've tested positive for lead. I would ask that I please be added to the 20 homes to be tested next. And also, I will continue to address this with my health professionals, but if there's anybody involved with DEQ or EGLE that can help me to plan next steps, or anybody else who may be in the same situation, I would appreciate it. Thanks, Dave, EGLE, everybody else.
Lisa, I would say talk to Brandon, as far as, future sampling.
Okay.
Okay, he's the one. Yes, Kristen, please.
Good. Oh, what is it? You want to go? When is it?
Yes, no,
She
we
pointed
need
at me.
an eye contact. Okay, so hi there. Oh, sorry. And my coffee. I can't vote about my coffee, sorry. Okay, so again, Kristen Schwakehofer from the Washtenaw County Health Department, and thanks for the plug. We are right across the parking lot. We do sell these handy dandy little tiny water bottles for lead. And we've heard a lot here, right? This is a complicated issue. There's lots of different types of water samples. This is the smallest one available, so and it's what we usually use as a standard because the Washington County Health Department normally focuses on well water for individual homes, right? We don't often wade into municipal water systems. However, in the last few years, more and more people are recognizing that their faucets and fixtures in the home may be lead sources. So this is another bottle that can be used to test your faucet. We have instructions that we ask you to fill out. And I will say on the back of those, it says, let your water run. Because normally, in most of what we do, we're looking for drinking water wells. And is that well water in contact with the natural lead formation in the earth? Your cases are very different. You're looking at your individual faucets and fixtures. So you're going to want to follow stagnation to see, does your faucet have lead? Normally, again, our recommendation is for people to run the water, as Jenny said, till it's cold, and that's flushing it out. And in this case, there's not distribution lines that we know that have any lead in them. So that should reduce all of your risks. And then in terms of the blood piece, so the county health department does offer blood lead testing, especially for typically for our infants, anyone under the age of 6. And I believe in January, there's going to be a requirement for all infants to get tested at 1 and 2 years of age. My own kids were never tested because I have a newer house. And we're talking a lot about water today. However, water is definitely not the only source, nor is it the main source of elevated blood lead. Most often, we're looking at lead paint, lead dust, could be hobbies, right? So if you're someone who does stained glass, it's often a leaded stained glass. It could be, if you're someone who does a lot of shooting ranges have lead bullets. Dust from shoes could be entered into the home and you could be exposed that way. So lots of other sources, depending on, your particular lifestyle, age of home. An older home may have lead-based paint. So there's often other areas that we can look at from either our nursing division if you have an elevated blood level. I think I hit everything. Did I miss anything? I'm looking for my other folks. Okay.
Can you talk about those levels? Like used to be 5 and others, that's weird.
Yeah, I don't remember all of the blood lead levels off the top of my head, but there is a handout at the MDHHS table that details all of those things that my Friday morning, mostly coffee brain has in them. And for those of you online, I don't know if we can attach handouts or send links so that all of those folks also have that information. I realize they're not here and so may not be able to pick those up. Great.
Thanks, Kristen.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else? We're gonna switch it over
Kits are
to,
$15, and as mentioned, we get the results back in 5 days, so.
Kristen, can you read the bottle? Sure. Sorry, Dave, I have one more follow-up thing, if that's okay.
sure.
Do I have to limit to 2 minutes? Yes.
Yeah,
That's really tough for me, sorry. That means I go faster, not that there's less content.
Okay.
All right, I will say, Kristen, you said that this is the smallest bottle you have. Do you also have 1 liter bottles?
Not.
Okay.
That's the only bottle we have for lead, so.
So I just want to point out, the difference with lead testing.
Yeah.
It's the same analysis.
Yep.
Exact same methodology, but the volume of water matters with what you're getting a result for. So with these bottles that the county has, cheaper, closer, faster than the state lab. These will tell you a lot about the fixture itself, but it won't tell you anything about the in-home plumbing because it's not big enough to hold enough water that the water flowed all the way through the fixture and through the plumbing that's elsewhere in the house. In general, when asked with these types of risk sources where it's copper with lead solder on the inside of the home, where you're looking at that 1988 and older copper, we would recommend a 1 liter bottle.
That's an important message for us to get.
It is, because if you use this and you figure out it's a fixture, that's one source, but it may not be the only source. And this is also something good to, if you want to look at your kitchen and your bathroom or a second bathroom, these are very valuable to look at that for individual fixtures. But as far as the interior building plumbing, you need a larger volume size.
So you only need one source from the house to fill that up, like the kitchen? You don't need to go to the bathrooms if you have an upstairs.
No, you would use different bottles.
You do use different bottles.
Yes.
Each fixture needs to be tested.
Yes, this is,
That's what I wanted to make sure.
because if you do a composite from different sources and one of them's a problem, you're not gonna know which one.
Right.
So you want to test them individually.
And I guess I'll just, to follow up on that, I would test the places where you're getting your drinking water,
Yes.
right? In my house, nobody drinks out of the bathroom, and so I wouldn't consider that a source. We might brush our teeth, we might swish our mouth, but nobody drinks that water. So for me, I would focus on the kitchen sink. A lot of people have inline fridge filters or, inline fridge water. That's when we get a lot of our drinking water. Kids like, we have a filter on ours. I don't know if it's a lead filter or not, so I'm gonna go check. So just thinking about all those different sources, where is your drinking water coming from? You could definitely test your bathtub, but again, most people aren't drinking bathtubs, so it's not something that's a valuable piece of information. And we don't consider bathtubs drinking water. Even though, yes, I know everyone's kids swallow a little bit of water from the bathtub at some point. Yes, I see a hand.
Yeah, so what you seem to be saying now is that we should be doing large bottle testing and small bottle testing. Is that correct?
So what I'm saying is we have two different things that we're looking for sources of lead in a home. If you have a faucet in your house that is older than 2014, it can contain up to 8% lead. So if you want to know whether that faucet is a possible source of lead in your home, you can test the faucet with that small bottle using stagnation, right? Letting the water sit with that faucet for a while. If you have a home that has, give me the date again, 1988?
88.
Plumbing installed before 1988 that may have lead solder, you might want to use a larger bottle to see if the plumbing within the home is contributing lead to your water. Did that answer your question?
So if you only do the large bottle and it tests positive, you don't know whether it's the plumbing in the system or it's the fixture, do you?
Sure.
Correct.
Correct. Yeah, it depends on how you test. And again, this is a very complicated system, and I'm happy to talk about your particular home more based on the age of the home and your individual specifics, right? If you have a newer home that shouldn't have lead solder, then we can probably say it's the faucet.
Yeah, and there's also, there's a cost benefit analysis here too, as far as confirming that a fixture is a problem or just knowing that it's older and it should probably be replaced anyway.
So
Yes.
can I come with my own larger bottle to your unit? Or where do I get the larger bottle if you only have the small ones?
The larger bottles are available from the state website. So the state EGLE lab that was in the presentation, you can order them and I believe they ship them to your house. And then there's instructions on how to take the water sample and return it.
Yeah, I have a
the
list of
state.
certified labs, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna send the list so that it's attached and available here. There's about 26 labs statewide that can do the same analysis and are certified to do that analysis. But the information I can give is only from the state lab, but it's not your only option. It may not be the most local, I'm not sure about the prices at the other labs. So you can pick whatever lab you choose to be able to run your tests.
And so where is the list going to be available?
So it sounds like we have a lot of information. Maybe we can work with the Sanitary Authority to distribute that through.
Lossofwater.org.
Yeah, that sounds, we would be happy to make sure all of that stuff is posted and available at a place that's convenient for all of you.
Okay, all right, can we move on? Thank you very much. Good input, good discussion. Jessica,
Yeah,
let's,
we've got 38 people joining by Zoom, so I want to give a chance for them to go. First up is Brian Cole, followed by Anthony Shu. First up, Brian Cole, are you still with us?
I am. Thank you very much. I'm just curious, if LASA is indeed required to put additives into the water, how much would that be on an annual basis in terms of broad estimate, as well as would there be any capital costs, new equipment, plant machinery, that sort of thing required to have that additive added?
Well, I could leave it to the engineer. I think in general, though, it's, there would be basically chemical addition, a chemical feed pump, not major costs to add not to add the required, chemical. It would be additional chemicals we are adding to the water, so. Does that answer your question, Brian?
For today, yes, thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Next up is Anthony Shu. Anthony?
Hi, this is Tony Sue. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I also bought those 2 water samples that were just shown. I planned to, use one for a faucet and then let it run for about 5 minutes before checking it again to get a more system value. And if both are negative, I'll be pretty calm about my house. However, what I'd like to ask specifically is if there has been any recent treatments, whether it's with bleach or pH changing agents by LASA, that may have caused corrosion of the pipes in, say, my house, and it's a 1960 house, and would adding other agents cause more problems than solve?
Brandon, you wanna, I'll tell you what, I'll answer it in general. We've had, first question was, we've had no change in our water treatment scheme since we've added the iron removal. And we purposely, at the time we added iron removal, we did not soften the water because of this specific problem. Softening the water makes the water more aggressive, hence corrosive, and more lead would get in the pipe. So we let the homeowner provide the softener locally, because our water runs about 400 parts hardness. What was the other part of that question?
It's a future question about if we would add more, that could make it worse.
Well, we are analyzing down to lower and lower levels. I can't 100% say down the road it wouldn't be a problem, but orthophosphates are commonly used now to take care of this issue. And there numerous municipalities use it. And it's NSF approved for what it's worth.
And I just want to ask anybody on Zoom who wants to ask a question, please raise your Zoom hand so I can call on you. Yes, next up is Jim Schultz. Jim. Go ahead, Jim.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you. Hi.
Thank you. If you got these results in the summer, why did it take you so long into October to notify the neighborhood? Actually, November, I believe.
Well, our first round of sampling took place in July. Our second round of sampling took place in August. And our third round of sampling took place in September. And you got the results here in, after the state, we finally submitted the information to the state. And then it was because we did have some issues. We were making sure what we had done was proper. I don't know beyond that, anything else to add, Brandon? No? So it was a process that took, we did over a period of time.
Is that protocol?
Is it protocol? Yeah.
It's 3 tests.
Yes, we gotta discuss it because in previous years, we retested, got a lower level. We were able to report the lower level. Now we retested, we have to report the higher level. So yeah, what's the point? So we're looking at the whole strategy of that and how we respond. This is, we'll work with the state to do what they feel is appropriate to properly resolve the issue.
Excuse me, am I still on?
Yes.
Yes, hi.
Well, I guess I hear your answer, but what we were told I called to have my home added to the testing because it is an older one. And I was told the first test had taken place January through June or July. And then I'm hearing you say that you didn't look at those tests until July from the first time. That seems like an inordinately long period of time.
Are you confusing next year with last year?
Yeah, I wonder if it's the same.
No, well, no.
I should
Next
hope
year-
not because.
Next year, we have to
Too
do
long.
more sampling, more information will be available to us. We'll make better selections and we got to do twice as many.
Thank you.
So, we're working with the state. We understand we weren't perfect the first time. We have some adjustments to make to the new rules and requirements.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, please raise your hand on Zoom if you'd like to speak. I see the president of Loch Alpine would like to speak. Feel free.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't change the name on the thing, but that's what the town is under. Hi, this is Brian Darty. Thank you guys for all your volunteer work. Just a quick question. I think Davis mentioned this to us previously, but the wells were all tested, correct? And there was no evidence of lead in the wells themselves?
The wells are required to be tested.
Brandon, would you please stand up?
Yeah.
Or I guess framing it another way, has there ever been any evidence of lead in our source water coming from the 3 wells?
No, there's never been any evidence of it coming through, correct, Brian? In the wells, the samples we've gotten in the past?
I don't know if any samples we've had in the past, but currently by March 31st, 2024, EGLE has us sampling our source water coming out of our agriculture. It's per their requirements when we're going testing.
Okay, so Brian, we'll have to look back, but there's never been.
I've never seen those results. I don't know if Jenny has historical records that maybe I don't have them.
Okay, so I'm actually gonna have to defer to the district representatives of EGLE. But there is monitoring that happens at the well locations on a routine basis that includes metals testing. But it's on a much less frequent basis. Most systems are on a 1 per 9 year basis because it generally tends to be fairly stable. You guys could go back and look at your own records for that as far as when that last time that test was done and what the levels were. But at being triggered from these higher lead levels that we're seeing at the kitchen and bathroom taps, Loch Alpine will be doing the sample like Brandon mentioned by the end of March.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
And Brandon.
All right.
Does that answer? Is that all right, Brian? That answer your question?
And I just see Taryn Simon just chimed in from EGLE, said she's going to look it up and reach out to Brandon to share the results if they have any. We'll push those out.
All right.
All right, anybody else interested in speaking, please raise your Zoom hand. Yes, VU3 FVU. You're on.
Good morning, this is Lee. Can you hear me?
Yes, hi Lee.
Hi, good morning, and thank you for having this public forum. I really do appreciate this. The one question I have, and I understand the laws that are being, the regulations that have been spoken to, and those are minimum standards. Is it possible to expedite the sampling? I think it was this was kind of alluded to by one of the earlier individuals. You know, we've talked about we're going to go to 20 samples. You know, can we get those 20 samples done in December? Maybe by the end of January. What's our restrictions or limitations of being able to be aggressive and get out and monitor our systems at the homes individually, and so we can really bring this to conclusion or at least understand the conditions at a much sooner pace. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee.
I was gonna say, Jennifer, I might need your help again. I guess in general, there's a lot of paperwork we've got to do. We got to do some planning. We've got to do some selection process here. It takes a little bit better. Planning is, what's the term they always say? Planning's a little better if done.
Planning makes perfect.
Planning makes perfect. Well, at least better.
Here we go, plan for better. I will say that December is not an option. It has to be between January 1st and June 30th, but as early as you want to. If you have it all scheduled, you can get it done as early as you want, starting New Year's Day. I think the best thing right now, that would help LASA complete this a little bit sooner is if they get the information that they need about interior home plumbing materials. And if there are any treatment devices within the home, to be able to plan and prepare to have their 20 locations verified, known, and hopefully even an appointment made for as early as possible in the new year.
Yes, so it's up to the homeowners too. We have to be able to reach them. Can't be down south for the 3-month period. And they have to be willing to sample and sample properly according to the procedure. We had to throw out a number of tests this past year because people did not properly sample.
And since it is a sample that's collected at your home, there has to be some coordination. Like I said, an appointment, some education, some quality assurance afterwards. Since it's within the individual homes, there has to be coordination and work on both sides to get that completed.
Kevin, you ought to add something to that?
This is a question for the board because I enjoy the awareness, and that's what we're here for today is awareness. But I want to make sure that the homeowners understand, this is what I understand, is that the LASA board is not funding a solution in the home to the homeowners. This is an awareness session based on state law requirements to the LASA board. Is that correct?
Yes.
So as a homeowner, that's why I took it upon myself to purchase a point of use filter. Everything we've learned today, it's up to the homeowners to find a solution. Is that correct?
If the problem is in the home.
But from all indications, the wells are safe. If the wells are safe, the piping is safe from LASA, and historical knowledge from builders shows that the solution can only be in the home. I'd be very surprised if it's from LASA, because LASA would have to have a point solution. And whatever you do, you could have 0 lead coming out of LASA water, and once it hits the home, it's going to be reintroduced into the homeowner's own water supply. That's where the lead comes from in most cases.
Well, you could add a corrosion control chemical, and that would take care of all the homes. LASA could do that.
Yeah.
But it only makes sense to do that if there's enough of an issue there, or if there's a few that have to be
I
corrected.
understand, yep. So if there's a requirement or not a requirement, but LASA could make that
Correct,
change to the chemistry of the water.
correct.
The-
Jennifer, agree?
Yeah, I guess the thing to take away is that there's a little bit of shared responsibility as far as the materials and the exposure within the home, and then also the corrosivity of the water that LASA is serving. And so when we see results that are elevated, we start looking into and awareness of both sides. And then if this is not just one data set and this continues and the action level exceedance continues, then that's when we would start looking at LASA installing and implementing corrosion control treatment that would then reduce the corrosion, even with those existing sources inside the home, and reduce the lead levels in the water.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Jess, to interfere. How are we doing?
You're fine. I don't see any other Zoom hands. We still have 35 attendees on Zoom. If you would like to speak, please raise your Zoom hand. Otherwise, Dave, why don't you switch back to our in-person attendees for a bit?
Okay, any other questions from the floor? Please.
So, thanks everyone for raising our awareness to this. I think I have an understanding of what's happening now. One of my questions as a homeowner of an older home, since we have a community well, we have a water softener. And so I feel like if we do have LASA fix the corrosivity of systemically, if that's what's necessary, I'm making it more corrosive as soon as it enters my house. Is there any resources that can be provided to the homeowners of, you know, what do we do? How do we evaluate our water softener that our devices that are inside the house? Are we undoing what you guys have fixed for us with our old houses and our old plumbing? How do I know what to do?
Very good.
Yes, thank you.
It's a really good question. And I am not going to be an expert in this, but I have some general things that I can recommend. One, it's going to be keeping up with the maintenance and also looking at the hardness of the water, and then also having it properly calibrated towards that. And not letting it get out of sync with that, because the level of treatment that you're using has to be equal to what you actually need. And when you're overcorrecting, that's when you're creating a problem. Beyond that, as far as getting it tested, I can make some recommendations, but fixes or alternate treatment devices, I would have to refer you to somebody else. As far as somebody in the water industry, in the water treatment industry, rather than in the water regulatory industry.
All right, any other comments, questions? Neil?
Could you tell me how many systems in the state using well source for their water have had lead problems? All our water comes from wells. So I'd be curious to know if this is a problem with lead in water with well source.
I would, so I can't give specifics without a spreadsheet. But I can at least say that we have action level exceedances pretty much every round of monitoring that happens. So whether it's a summer round between June and September, first half of the year, January to June, or July to December, there is generally at least one action level statewide. I will say that there are a lot of communities that are on wells as their source of water, but there are also very large swaths of Michigan that are served by surface water. Especially like over in the southeast area where you've got the Great Lakes Water Authority, and they feed all of those surrounding communities in that area. That is all from a surface water body. And I will say that there are action level exceedances from groundwater systems and from surface water systems as well. So it's more of a common problem than you think, because it's really all of those sources between the service line, the interior building plumbing, the fixtures themselves, that's a common thing across the state, regardless of if it's surface water or groundwater.
Is a question about raw water? Sounds like that's, to me, that's what I heard.
As far as raw
Yeah, do you
water?
have any sense of like raw water as being before it was through the plumbing?
So I have been in this position for about 7 years now, and I have not had a system where there is a base level of lead in the groundwater. Because every single action level exceedance community, at least once, will have to collect that source water sample. And where it's been properly collected, I have not seen anyone with a detectable level of lead in the source water.
I actually have an answer to that. Taryn had just sent me over a text with the results from 2019 for the metals testing done on the wells.
Okay.
Lead was not detected in 2019.
Okay.
The other thing I would kind of wanted to ask, maybe you could help with this, is when we do our regulatory sampling, the water softeners have to be bypassed. Is that correct? Can you kind of maybe help them with that procedure? Like give them, because we have to go out and we have to sample these, and now the water softeners have to be bypassed in order for it to have a valid sample. And I know there's a lot of residents that have water softeners. Is that something that Jen maybe could kind of describe the procedure so that we can kind of maybe get everybody on board, people that want to be tested?
So our general recommendations for collecting compliant samples, specifically for the lead and copper rule, is that you either avoid homes that have internal treatment devices where they're altering the quality of the water, or to bypass those devices. And when you have something like a faucet mounted filter, that's a little bit easier because you can turn it in a bypass or on mode. When you have a whole home treatment device, that's a little bit more difficult. If you have a softener that only softens some of the water within your home, say it only goes to the shower or the appliances, but your kitchen faucet is still unsoftened, then you can collect a sample there. However, if your entire home is softened or treated in some other way, you would have to bypass that entire device to be able to collect a sample. And that sample would still have to be from a kitchen or a bathroom. So to be able to do that, you would basically be bypassing, if it's already valved and plumbed that way, or not using that device for a period of days to be then able to get a sample that is untreated. And the sampling methodology is very specific as far as that you would have to turn it off, I'm saying for a period of several days, because you can't turn it off, flush the water through the home so that all the water is unsoftened, and then immediately start your stagnation. There was a change in the rule and the sampling methodology to try and get better information about what people would normally be doing when they're going to fill a glass of water. And that is not flushing the entire home before they go and fill their glass of water. So you would have to turn it off or bypass it for several days, use the water normally, then start your period of stagnation, then collect your samples. So it is a very involved process. So this next round, January to June, that's why I'm saying that getting in touch with people, getting this information to either the operator or LASA to be able to better coordinate the sampling process. Information about softeners from you is going to be important for them, but then also how to take a sample when there's a softener involved is going to be very important for you from the water operator, from whomever is your representative that's helping you collect that sample.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Jen. Just for your information, then the sampler bypass was the reason why we didn't have our 10 required samples, because some of them did not go through or went through the softener, did not bypass. So it's an issue. One of the details we have to work out in this next round and make all the homeowners doing the sampling aware of the detail. Yes, sir.
Colby Buswell, 3811 East Loch Alpine. I think this meeting was awesome and a good relief, I think, for most. I think you can speak to that. My questions might be more suited toward a board meeting. I'm wondering if you had all this information before we got the pamphlets that were delivered door to door. And then if you did have all of this information, if it could not have been delivered less technically, and with all these resources and links instead of an 800 number that didn't really answer in some cases. That's my overall question. And again, if this needs to be saved for the board, I understand. Thank you.
No, it doesn't have to be saved, I don't think. In general, we found the information out. We worked towards a solution. We were dictated by the state what we could do. The state had to get information out into all your hands within a 3-day period from formal acceptance or of our report. And I don't know, anything else to add to that, Jennifer? I guess we definitely need to continue to work on it. I would have preferred it not be so harsh a letter going out. I think it did shock people, but it did the purpose of making us aware of the situation.
I will say that the letter that was formally sent out, like Dave is saying, it was required, and a lot of the language in that is required, and it's not the most user friendly. And I completely acknowledge that, but that's something this is one of those sections of the rule where things have to be verbatim in that order. And so there was very little flexibility about possibly softening the message or making it more relatable. The only way to really do that is to then have conversations, have feedback, have other links and resources that you can use.
So this process all the people that exceed go through the same process, Jen?
With the same information, yes.
Same information. Okay.
William Doolittle. William, you're on. There you go.
Okay, I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, hi, Bill.
Okay, good morning. William Doolittle, been a resident in Loch Alpine since 1979. Now that this lead issue has become public knowledge, what would the current legal real estate implications to all of Loch Alpine's 460 homes be before further testing has been completed?
What are the legal and real estate implications for all of Loch Alpine?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Prior to the testing being completed, Bill, is that your question?
Well, the question is, it looks like we have information, if anybody were to sell, would have to be revealed. Is that the case?
We can't legally advise you, Bill, but yeah, and I know I just sold a house and had to go through the same notification process with my realtor. So I would say you probably are, but you need to get legal advice on that. It's public information on the state website also.
Right. So essentially, this makes 460 homes under a bit of a shadow in terms of real estate values and the resale and so forth.
I disagree, but that might be an extreme position.
Okay.
I mean, there were of the 9, there were 7 that there's no issue.
Yeah, although testing is not complete, I'm not sure where that would leave us. But anyhow, I will stop right there.
But certainly that's why we want good sampling, good testing, get more information so we can track down where the problems are.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Bill.
Thanks for the meeting.
Any other questions?
Last call for any questions from people from Zoom. Please raise your Zoom hand. Last call. Okay.
No more at this point, then. We will have the tables open. If you have some individual questions you want to ask the health department or EGLE or LATSA, please feel free. We'll hang around until 11 or approximately, or however long it takes to answer your questions. Let's see, going through the agenda then, I guess, are there any summarized meeting outcomes, any follow-up items at this point? We are putting together the work plan and we will notify you that when our next round of sampling will be, when it's occurring. Can I have a motion to close? So moved. Kingsley, motion, and McLaughlin, support. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, meeting adjourned at
10:42.
10:42.
You can't
Thank you, everybody, for joining by Zoom. We're gonna close out the Zoom session. We just have a recent table here from the county and the EGLE that we're gonna, added these resources, weather.